Hello and welcome. I'm Joseph Hoffman, and in this tutorial, I'm going to help guide you through learning to play a simplified version of All of Me by Schmidt. I'll be using the easy piano version you can purchase from sheetmusicdirect.com. Find the link below. But please note, even though it's labeled easy piano, I wouldn't call it easy. This version is actually what I would call intermediate level. It's fast and has lots of technical challenges. But is it worth the effort? Absolutely. It's a fantastic piece, which is why I use it as the intro theme song for most of my own Hoffman Academy videos, with permission from the composer, of course. Let's get started by checking out the score. Here's the sheet music for All of Me, page 1. Notice that Schmidt, the composer, suggests playing this freely. When a composer says freely, they mean don't play it like with a metronome, really strict in time. You're going to let it flow, sometimes speed up a little, sometimes slow down a little, very freely. Also, Schmidt indicates to play this with pedal. There's no pedal marking, so you're going to use your ear, listen, and use a generous pedal. I pedal through most of this piece, but we'll do frequent pedal lifts to keep it from sounding too blurry. Our key signature is C major, no sharps and flats, 4/4 time. One of the trickiest aspects of All of Me is the rhythm. So I suggest you take the time to learn the rhythms correctly from the start, and possibly by writing in the counts to your music. For example, you could write in the count, just like I've done here on line 1. Even though it says freely, we still want to learn the rhythms correctly, and then we'll let it flow and not be super strict about it, but we still want to learn them correct. So for example, this first line could be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then note the fermatas who might linger on 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and another fermata. Note that whenever you have 16th notes, you'll have to fit both 16th notes inside one count. So at first, try and learn the rhythms really carefully and exactly, and then once you have it mastered, try it freely, where you're going to sometimes move the rhythms forward a little faster, and then maybe coming up on a fermata, you might slow down a little bit, like this. Here's how I would play it freely. So notice how through here, I kind of rushed forward a little bit to add some excitement, and then as I came close to that fermata, I slowed down a little bit. And that's what a composer means by freely. Sometimes you're going to move it forward, sometimes you're going to relax it. You go with the flow of the notes. Let's check out line 2. I've added in the counts once again. So in your own music, which again, I highly encourage you to support the composer by downloading your own copy, using the link below, print this out and write in these counts so you can learn the rhythms accurately from the start. Note we've got a 16th note connected to a dotted 8th. So you'll play that kind of quickly. In fact, if you wanted to use 4E and 16th note subdivisions, or just think 4 and then 1 and 2, then this is a triplet 16th note. So all three of these notes have to fit inside that and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 and. So let's listen to this line with counting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and fermata 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then this and leads us to the next line. So let's stop there for a minute. And now listen to this played freely. And then we're going to move that on down to the next line. Let's see what the counts look like. Once again, we have a triplet, 16th notes all fitting inside this and. So let's listen to this line, again, played freely. I'm going to start with this 8th note because this 8th note leads us right into this phrase. So we want to think of this note belonging to the next line. going on to line 4. Note the poco ritardando, which means slow down a little bit. We're coming up to the end of this introduction section, and a composer will show us that sometimes with a double bar line, which tells us this is the end of a section and the start of a new one. Now we've got it marked fast. Put all of yourself into it. All right, so now instead of playing it flexibly where we're speeding up, we're slowing down, now we need a very strict, exact tempo, very rhythmic, a very different feel starting here as we go into whole different section and new feel. The rhythms are also going to be extremely important to learn correctly from the start. So let's look at how the counts fit in. Highly recommend you write these counts in your own music and start really slow and careful. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's going to go much faster in the end, but you'll learn it so much easier if you start super slow and count. Let's hear the whole intro section. Then we're into the fast section. I'm not going to show you the counting for the whole page, but looking at this first line on page 2, note that whenever you have a dotted quarter note, it has to get 1 and 2. The next note will be and. Also, watch out for the rests. You can't cheat the rests. Rests get a count too. So this quarter note gets 1 and, 8th rest gets 2. And for this 8th note, 2-note chord, and then 3 and is in the left hand. 4 and is in the right hand. If you take the time to write in the counts and learn this carefully, you'll be so much more successful. Take it slowly at first, starting here in measure 17. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's going to sound really random and maybe even robotic or weird or boring when you're practicing it slowly. But that's the only way to get these rhythms really accurate. And then you'll gradually speed that up. A metronome can be very helpful for that. Just let the metronome click on every one of these counts. And then gradually speed it up until it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 then eventually even faster. So fast you can't even count it. Okay, but how do you get there? You do it slowly at first, gradually speed up. So when you're playing this fast section, notice how the right hand is playing treble C. The left hand also comes up to treble staff and is playing treble C. And so your hand's going to have to share this note. The easiest way to do that, let your right hand just fall where it naturally falls, and then let the left hand kind of come in front of, ahead of, and above the right hand like this. And then they'll each kind of have their own space to share that note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, and then going on. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. So again, at first, take it really slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you might use the metronome. Can set it to about 160 beats per minute. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and every click is 1/8 note. Then you'll gradually speed that up. Once you hit 200 on your metronome, then take it back to 100, cut it in half, but now these are quarter notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you can gradually speed that up again until you're somewhere around 140, 150, 160, 170. That will be the final speed you're shooting for with all of me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now notice in this next section, starting at measure 31, it says both hands 8 VA. So note that the 8 VA is marked only in the right hand, but because it says that both hands, the left hand, instead of playing down here, it's going to also be playing up 1 octave higher. So the hands are way up here on the piano. And again, use pedal generously. It will give the correct feel for this song. And in that previous section, I was using a lot of pedal as well. So let's hear this next section, starting at measure 31. Three and 4 in. And then here, let's check out the counting for these next two measures. The left hand's playing quarter note, then a dotted quarter note, which will get 3 and 4, and then this flag eighth note on the and of 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then notice, here we've got this interesting syncopated rhythm. Eighth rest is on beat 1, so this eighth note comes on the and of 1, eighth rest, another eighth note on the and of 2. So note that we have 3 notes in a row on the and, which will give it a syncopated feel. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Listen to that a little faster. Okay, it's a fun rhythm. Again, practice it slowly with counting at first, then gradually speed up to get it correct. Let's also check out the counting for this next section. Remember that the value of a dotted quarter note is 3 eighth notes, or 3 of these counts, 1 and 2. The and comes here, and note the ties. These ties will stretch this eighth note out to equal the eighth note plus the quarter note, which also would be worth 3 of these counts, and 3 and then this 4 and, eighth rest, and 2 and for this dotted quarter note, 3 and 4 and. Looks a little tricky, but with careful counting, you can get this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Take your time to learn these right. Take your time to write in the counts as you need to get these rhythms accurate. And then at full speed, it will sound like this. So let's listen to this section, starting at measure 45 with counting. So this will not be full speed. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? And then eventually you'll get it up to full speed. Okay, and that was without pedal, and of course you'll also be adding in pedal, which will make it sound even cooler. Then John Schmidt gives us a fortissimo mark. We're at full volume now. I think the secret to mastering this is writing in the counts, being careful with the rhythms, starting slow, use the metronome, giving you one click for every eighth note, learn the right hand alone, learn the left hand alone, and then put it together and gradually speed it up until you're at that full performance speed. Now let's check out the next section. This next section begins at measure 79, and in this section, the accents are so extremely important. Why? Well, without these accents, this section is going to sound actually really boring. It's just going to sound like the same three notes over and over again. G, C, D, G, C, D, G, C, D, G, C, D, G, C. It's just like, what is John Schmidt doing? Well, he's actually doing something very clever. He's placing the accents on specific notes that if you do those accents really clearly and make these other notes quite soft, a melody will kind of appear out of the chaos. So listen to this. If I just play this G, C, D, C, C, D, G, it makes a melody line that's going to pop out. Now listen to it with all the notes in between, played very quietly, and see if you can hear that melody pop out from those accents. Sounds a lot more interesting that way. Again, without those accents, it's going to just sound just like background noise, okay? But pop those accents out. You got to really accent them strongly and make the notes in between extra soft. And that contrast is what brings this alive. Sometimes you'll notice John Schmidt puts a bunch of accents in a row, and that's a place where he wants it a little bit more intense. Okay, so you're going to bring out all those notes. Follow the accents, and it will sound really cool here. So again, you might set your metronome to about 160 beats per minute, and every click is an eighth note. Focus on the accents. Notice if a note doesn't have an accent, I'm purposefully playing that note extra softly, so those accents can really pop. And then you'll gradually speed that up until you're here. Now, here in measure 101 to 102, I want to show you an error I found in the music. Sorry, John Schmidt, but there's a mistake here. There should be a tie between these two eighth notes. Okay, so we don't play this eighth note. This just carries across. All right, so you play this chord and this chord, tie across, and then accent on the B, D, don't play that C. So go ahead and mark that tie in your music. Sometimes if two notes are tied, I'll even put an X over that note just to remind me I'm not playing that note, just holding it down. And one more error that I'd like you to correct in your score. Find measure 131. This is page 8, or the last page. This F should be a G, which sits above. It's the same note you just played earlier. It's just G, C, G. Let's go ahead and fix that in your score so we can play that correct. Let's hear from these last 3/8 notes of measure 102 to the end. This is a long piece, so I encourage you to take it one section at a time. Master a small section, then master another small section. Always start hands alone, right hand, left hand, hands together, slowly with the metronome. Once you have a section mastered, go on to another, then link all those sections together till you have the full thing at full performance speed. Great job learning how to play All of Me by John Schmidt. Remember to support the composer by purchasing your own copy of the sheet music by using the link below. Thanks for watching and happy practicing.